I really like the idea of doing cover version albums. I think it's interesting for fans or anyone who's interested in my music to know what inspires me. When I was a kid, I used to really like the Brian Ferry cover albums that came out because I imagined that inspired him, and the other good thing about it was it opened me up to a lot more music. I didn't know the original versions of a lot of the songs that he chose, and I went out and discovered them after his records. So he broadened my taste quite a lot when I was, 14, whatever. Right, I started thinking that I might actually finally make the follow-up to the first Counterfeit EP after we finished Exciter. And when I knew that Dave was going into the studio to start making his solo record, so I realised I'd have quite a lot of free time where I didn't have to be involved in activities with the band. So it was time to put into action what I've been talking about doing for 13 or 14 years. So I suppose I started thinking vaguely about what sort of songs I wanted to record and who to work with, but I didn't really start anything really seriously until, say, January last year. I imagined that it would be quite easy recording a covers album, because once I'd chosen the songs, it seemed like it would just be a question then of recording them. But I don't really like doing straight cover versions. It's often a case of trying to reinvent the songs, taking them in different directions. But obviously they still have to work. They still have to have some spirit of the original. Something that you like about the original still has to be there in the new invented version. And that's sometimes not the easiest thing. Sometimes there's a lot of experimentation, and sometimes there's a lot of fruitless experimentation. You might spend 4 weeks trying out. You might even sometimes I think we spent 3 or 4 weeks on one song, taking it down one route, and then we'd get to the end of that 4 weeks and go, you know what, that's not really working. So it would be back to the drawing board. And so I was working with Andrew Philpott, who did all the programming on the last 2 Depeche Mode tours, and Paul Freegard, who did the pre-production with me on the Exciter record. And we'd all often Andrew would work on his own, and I often worked with Paul, and we'd all be trying to, sometimes working on different songs, but we'd all be trying to get the first basis of a song, the very most basic skeleton of a song. And once we had that, then it things start falling into place a bit better. Usually, as I said, not always. There's a lot of trial and error. I made the record with the 2 people I just mentioned, and we all played various things on it. And I did it at home. I've just got a really small studio set up at home. It's not like a big, old-fashioned recording studio. It's just like a home setup. But I think it was important for me to do that because, I like the idea of working at home, because it means I still have some sort of family life. If I'd have spent 7 or 8 months of last year in a studio working, stupid studio hours, then, I wouldn't have seen my family for that whole period. I always think that there's something wrong with that there is a conflict of interest for me to write songs for myself while I'm part of a band. I'm not the most prolific of songwriters, so at the moment there's usually a 3 or 4 year period between Depeche Mode records. So if I wrote songs for myself and used them on an album for myself, that gap between Depeche Mode albums would grow even longer. I think it's quite easy to distance myself from the band, because because we spend such long periods of time together, living in each other's pockets, it's nice whenever we have a break. We don't really contact each other too much, and we don't see each other very much at all. I mean, hardly at all. So, it's quite easy to, close myself off from that and do whatever else I want to do. I think that probably the majority of the songs, yes, on the album are quite dark. But somehow that's what I'm drawn to. I think I've always been like that. Somehow they resonate with me, and they make more sense. I don't know, they seem more in the key of the universe somehow. I've never been one that really likes really happy songs. Firstly, it was just a song that from my youth. I wasn't ever a massive David Essex fan, but I liked a few of his tracks. And Stardust was one of them, and probably my favourite one. It's also from the film Stardust, which is a film about the demise of a rock star and how he gets heavily involved in drugs, which was pointed out to me had some kind of parallels with Depeche Mode, but that's not the reason why I chose it. It's just a good emotional song, and I think it does sum up somehow the loneliness of being a rock star at times. Of course, it's a great job, but it's a very strange job. It's very weird. It's a very simple idea. It's basically me, in a hotel room, me in a car. I think it's just supposed to be. For me, it seems like it's trying to express the loneliness of the rock star. I think that's what it's trying to do, and then that's intercut with girls dancing in suits. I really wanted to cover a Nick Cave song, just because I think he's been a great songwriter for the last 20 years. I used to love some of the birthday party stuff even. And he was one of the songwriters where it was probably possible for me to pick 2 or 3 of his songs, pick from 2 or 3 of his songs, and just Love a Man stood out. I just thought that I could do an interesting version of that, and again do it differently to him. His version is absolutely different. My version sounds nothing really like Nick Cave. Lost in the Stars is one of the songs that I had, that I knew I wanted to record before I even had to sit down and start making lists of songs that I wanted to do. That would be the one song that if I had to keep one on the album and get rid of the others, I would keep, just because I love the song so much. But that is the exception to the rule, in that I didn't know how to change that one. I had to do a pretty straight version of that. But I loved the song so much that I had to somehow try and make that more traditional version work in the context of an album of electronics. The Velvet Underground were have always been a really important band for me. They really opened my mind when I first heard their records. Just the way they could go from like sweet pop music one second to noise and songs about the darkness of drugs and stuff the next. It was really amazing for me, and I really wanted to record one of their songs. And I think Candy Says probably wouldn't have been my first choice. I think that I really love the Nico songs, like Femme Fatale or I'll Be Your Mirror. But because I already wanted to do the Nico song, the song that Nico covered, I felt that I really had to choose a song that Lou Reed had sung. So, Candy Says is probably my favourite Lou Reed song, the one that he sings. Right. I think for most of the world, that song won't make any sense at all, obviously, because I've sung it in German. But, I was fortunate that I learnt German at school and lived in Berlin, and had a German girlfriend for a while. I can speak German, so just from listening to Nico records, I just loved that song. I thought it was so perfect for her, even though she didn't write it. And through Nico, I just loved the sentiment of the song. Well, obviously I'm carrying on doing a little bit of promotion for this album, and then going out and playing a few dates. I may do a few other things over the summer, maybe in connection with this, and then towards the end of the year, I think we'll talk as a band about what the future is for us. About when we might go back into the studio, and when it would be nice for an album to be finished.